Sunday of ordinary time, the introit we are given is Venite, adoremus Deum. Now, if you like Christmas carols, you probably know these first two words, Venite, adoremus. Where they come from is from this psalm, Psalm 94 in the Vulgate edition, 95 in most modern Bibles, and it means, "O come, let us adore." And we sing this every morning at vigils. The church traditionally sings this psalm as the first psalm of the day, and it uses a refrain for this psalm, which is called the invitatory, and the refrain often has these words in it, "O come, let us adore." And so this was adapted into the Christmas carol, "O come, all ye faithful." Now, what is this text doing here? Well, since we sing this text every day, it's not a Christmas text per se. And in fact, the text that is taken from the psalm for this introit reads, "O come, let us adore God, and let us go before the Lord. Let us weep before him who made us, for he is the Lord our God." So, on the one hand, we have this, "O come, let us adore," which does have sort of epiphany themes. At the same time, we have this weeping before the Lord, which somewhat anticipates Lent. Now let us sing plorémus ante one more time, just to remind us how this sounds. Have a modern translation of this psalm, you might have, instead of "let us weep before him," something like "let us bow down or kneel down before the Lord." This is an interesting problem that goes back to the Hebrew text, because the word to kneel is baracha, and the word to weep is bacha. There's only one letter difference. If one letter drops out of the word baracha, you get the word weep. And so there were different versions of the Hebrew text back when the Greek translation was made 2 centuries before Christ, and both of these versions have entered into different translations. But the Latin version definitely is emphasizing this idea of weeping before the Lord. Why is this? Traditionally, this introit appears on the Saturday of Ember Week in September. And these, as I mentioned last week, or maybe a couple weeks ago, these were groups of days that occurred 4 times each year, in which the church was encouraged to pray and fast and implore God's assistance in various ways. And so this introit is very appropriate for an Ember Day, praying, encouraging the people to come together to repent before the Lord and to ask his assistance in our spiritual and temporal needs. And so this has been moved now to the 5th Sunday of ordinary time, which is actually not such a bad place for it, because, as I said, it has both themes from Epiphany and themes from Lent. Let us now sing just the last phrase again, "Quia ipse est Dominus." Quia So the beginning of this phrase is very similar to the beginning of the second phrase. The second phrase, plorémus, began like this, plorémus. This one begins, quia ipse est. As I was preparing this, I was wondering if these sorts of repetitions, which we had in last week's introit, laetetur cor, come about because these introits would have been sung only one day per year, and so memorizing them would have been more difficult because they weren't sung for a whole week, they were sung for one day. Perhaps. That's just my own personal imagining of how these things came to be. One other point of chant interpretation which I want to leave with you is that it's tempting to try to find sound painting or word painting in the chant, so that when we have a word like plorémus, and when we have repeated notes, and we're told by scholars that these are probably to be restruck, we might imagine that this is to imitate weeping. Plorémus, and something like that. The problem with that is that we get these three repeated notes several other times. Ipse est Dominus, for he is the Lord. I don't think that we're going to be imitating a weeping sound for that. So it's very tricky to try to read a lot of word painting into the chant. The chant, by reason of its ordering, has a way of schooling the emotions, as I've said, but it also does not put limits on the interpretation of the text. Rather, the text is allowed to speak in a very direct way. And now we're going to do that for you. Let the text speak through our singing. Venite, adoremus Deum.